In the dim-lit parlors of North American homes, there lingers a question that often goes unanswered, feared by many and spoken by few. Where are our sisters, our daughters, our mothers? This chilling query opens a Pandora's box on the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, MMIWG, a stark symptom of systemic brutality festering at the roots of modern societies. Tinged with the stains of colonialism and drenched in contemporary neglect, the narrative of these silenced women is not just about the missing. It is a telling account of the missing attention, care, and justice that should have been their inherent right. The eerie silence around the MMIWG crisis is as troubling as the vigorous storms that occasionally sweep across the plains. The history of Indigenous peoples in North America is scarred by episodes of violence and dispossession, with the MMIWG crisis being a contemporary extension of this violent legacy. Colonial policies not only stripped Indigenous peoples of their land and rights, but also sowed seeds of systemic racism and discrimination that continue to impact Indigenous communities today. Boarding schools, forced relocations, and discriminatory laws have contributed to a cycle of poverty, educational disparities, and social instability, setting the stage for the continuing vulnerability of Indigenous women and girls. It's within this crucible of historical oppression that Indigenous women and girls became, and remain, disproportionately vulnerable to violence. Today's crisis is rooted deeply in these institutional abuses, where the stripping away of cultural identity and autonomy has had long-lasting, dire consequences. Each statistic of violence against Indigenous women is a ghostly echo of these past injustices, resonating through the years. Behind every statistic, there's a story, a name, and a life cut tragically short or cast into the shadows of uncertainty. Take, for instance, the story of Ashlyn Mike, an 11-year-old Navajo girl who was abducted and murdered in 2016. Her case drew fleeting national attention to a systemic issue that is often relegated to the backgrounds of media focus. Ashlyn's bright, artistic spirit, cherished by her family and community, became a rallying cry for change, highlighting the urgent need for effective law enforcement strategies and community-driven interventions. From her story and countless others, grassroots movements have emerged, powerful in their resolve and poignant in their demands. These movements are the backbone of the fight against MMIWG, crafting systems of communication and support that bridge gaps left by official mechanisms. They create spaces where women's voices can echo and resonate, not as victims, but as warriors in their own narrative. While numerous policies have been drafted and funds allocated to address the MMIWG crisis, a lack of coordination and substantial focus continues to stymie significant progress. The often cited National Inquiry into MMIWG in Canada recommended transformative legal and social changes to end systemic violence against Indigenous women. However, implementation has been sluggish and fraught with bureaucratic inertia. On a more hopeful note, grassroots movements are the shining beacons amidst these systematic failures. Their community-based approaches have taken on not just preventative measures, but also educative roles, teaching resilience and rights awareness. By fostering a closer cooperation between tribal authorities and national law enforcement, they aspire for a nuanced understanding that respects tribal sovereignty while combating the crisis effectively. The MMIWG crisis is not an isolated issue, but a poignant symbol of broader systemic failures that require urgent redress. To dismantle the legacies of violence and neglect, there needs to be a genuine commitment to change from all levels of society, from governmental bodies to individual citizens. Recognizing the authority and voice of Indigenous communities and synthesizing these with national efforts may pave the path to not just reducing the statistics of violence, but restoring dignity to the survivors and the families of the victims. The collective voice that demands change is growing louder, fueled by the spirits of the missing and the cries of the grieving. It's this voice that must guide the reforms, an echo from the silenced, demanding not to be forgotten. Join it, support it, amplify it. It's high time the question, "Where are our daughters?" receives the full, sustained attention it deserves.